Good morning. Welcome back to the farm. Today, we're going to talk about wheel hoes, what they are, what you do with them, and more importantly, why you might want to think about having one. Behind me is our first wheel hoe. I actually built that. Well, sort of. We'll talk about that in a minute. What you do with a wheel hoe is it's a means of controlling weeds in your garden. The wheel hoe will allow you to do weeding, but the weeding's a little different. It's certainly a lot easier than using a hoe, or, we've got a tractor and cultivators here, but it does so much damage to the soil. And by damage, I mean, you've got a gazillion weed seeds and all these other things in your soil all the time, just waiting for a chance to germinate. So every time you turn that with something big, like a big tiller or a plowshare or whatever, it will stir those seeds. Now, that works well in commercial agriculture if you're going to spray. We don't spray here. So what we do is we will build our beds, use silage tarps if we can, and then use wheel hoes the rest of the year to keep the weeds down. Now what a wheel do is it gives you very, very shallow cultivation. So what you do is you build your beds, we raise everything on raised beds here, and then put your silage tarps over it, and then you raise your silage tarps, you pull them off, and then you run a wheel hoe. So let's take a look at this wheel hoe. Like I said before, this is our very first wheel hoe. This one's probably 15, 20 years old. This was what they called a whiz-bang wheel hoe, and it has served us very well for many years. Now, we've replaced this one, but we still use it. As you can see, it's muddy right now from where we used it this morning. So it is a very, very good way to utilize a garden tool to keep your weeds down. Now, wheel hoes have to have a very, very frequent shallow cultivation. Frequent as in probably once a week in order to keep the weeds down. Now, a lot of times you're going to look at your garden and say, hey, we don't necessarily need to weed this week because things are looking good. Well, that's exactly where you're wrong. Those weeds are thinking and they're doing everything they need to do to germinate. And before you know it, 2-3 weeks down the road, when you get back to it, you got weeds everywhere. If you use this thing preemptively, i.e. once a week, then you'll not have any weeds. We have Bermuda grass here, which is very pretty grass, but unfortunately it is just like a weed in the garden. Once you get it going, it's hard to get rid of. And this will take care of it in a heartbeat. As you can see, the back of the wheel hoe is basically a blade that you drop under the soil, maybe an inch or so under the soil, and it just cuts the top of the plant weeds from the root, and they die, and you're good to go. This is just one attachment, though, that wheel hoes can have. Now, this particular wheel hoe, that's all they can have, but nonetheless, some of them have multiple attachments. This is another one of our wheel hoes. This is a Haas wheel hoe. Now, this wheel hoe is about a year or so old, and it's got lots and lots of attachments you can get. This one actually has a dibble wheel attachment on it from where we planted garlic in the fall. But nonetheless, this thing is heavy. If you were going to get one today and in 2023, this is exactly where you want to go. This thing is a beast. This is a double wheel hoe model. Obviously, it has 2 wheels on the front, but it is really, really heavy. Now, what I'm going to show you today is we're going to take that wheel hoe off, and we're going to put on one of the other attachments that actually moves the dirt for us. The dibble wheel punches holes in the ground so that we can space where we put our plants. Very, very handy when planting garlic and lots of other things. It also has an oscillating hoe like our other wheel hoe. Here's a close-up of the dibble wheel. This thing, we actually have a double dibble wheel, and we use it when we're planting, when we go to plant onions later this week. We'll be using a double dibble wheel to mark those holes for us at about a 4-inch spacing, give or take, and we will put those onions in most skosh. Now, this Haas wheel hoe has become kind of a staple around here since we got it. It's absolutely amazing. Again, the dibble wheel's on here though, and we're not ready to plant, so we're going to take these off and put our sweeps on. Let me snatch up a couple attachments here and show you. This is an oscillating hoe. This actually goes back and forth when you're going back and forth in the garden, and it cuts the soil just like the other one, like we talked about. These are the sweeps. These are the actual pieces that we're going to put on today that will allow this thing to cut the weeds to pieces before we plant. So let's get started. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take the dibble wheel attachment off. You've got basically 2 3/8 bolts, 9/16 wrench, and it comes right off. I've actually pre-loosened these because, well, you don't want to see me fighting and arguing with the wheel hoe on camera. And so we're going to go ahead and loosen these up and pull this off so you can see exactly how this is done. And again, this thing is really heavy. And so here we go. This whole piece slides off. And the wheel hoe itself, basically, move this over there, is a separate piece. It's amazing how this is all put together. As you can see, I have moved the dibble wheel assembly out of our way. Now I'm going to take these sweeps right here, which is really what's going to do the cutting of the weeds in our garden, and attach this. Now it's got 2 3/8 bolts on the top. You take the end one off. The end one's closest to the part that's bent down. And they've got all these really great different holes in these things. So what you do is you pick up your wheel hoe and you slide this thing through here, and we go about halfway or so. And we will put this thing in the hole, and we're going to just kind of tighten it down just a bit, just to see what we've got going on here. And then we're going to put the other one on. Now we center these, give or take a little bit. It's not a rocket scientist kind of thing. So if you're not a NASA engineer, or SpaceX these days, I guess, you can probably do this without any real instruction. But I'm here to help you anyway. If you have any problems, give me a direct message or send me an email or something, and I will walk you through this. Now it takes 2, but the cutting edge is on the front. And so here's our other sweep. And be careful, these are sharp, even if they're dirty. But we're going to put this one on here. So we're going to take our end bolt off right here, another 3/8 bolt, and we're going to slide it on, just like I did just a second ago. So we're going to pick this thing up. I'm going to put this on here, and again, center it best we can. And when you go to see, you will see that there's a slight overlap, an overlap in the sweeps. What that does is it prevents you from missing any weeds right down the center. Ingenious device. Now again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to center this up so my overlap is about maybe 1/2 inch or so. So it's going to require me to move one of these a little bit, and there we go. Now all I need to do at this point, let me get them hand tight, is tighten these things up. 9/16 wrench, by the way. Preferably not vice grips. Not going to do the bolts any good if you do that. The nuts, the bolts, any of it. They're carriage bolts, so you only have to worry about one end. And tighten these puppies up, and you're pretty much good to go. Now, again, the main reason for using a wheel hoe is preventative weed control. If your weeds are already out of control, you have a problem. And a wheel hoe, although effective, will take weeks to get that back under control, so you might have to use another way. Every time you turn that soil, every time you're turning weed seeds, and you're going to get some weeds. So if you do this once a week, you take this thing and run it down your rows, get in between your plants if you can, your weed problems will be negligible. If you get a rainy week or something, you're going to get behind and it's a problem. Let's go out the garden and see how it works. Oh yeah. I hope you learned something today. The wheel hoe, a vital component for growing your own food. Until next time, see you down at the barn.